lived with Martin for 3 years. Occasionally, we slept together, but we never kissed. It was the purest kind of physical relationship. Until one day, I accidentally saw him and his secretary in an intimate position, allowing her free access to his private space. I understood and sensibly made way for them. That night, as I left, I sent him a text as a farewell. I'm going back to my hometown to get married. Let's not contact each other anymore. Later, I saw off my arranged marriage partner. Turning around, I met Martin's gaze. He could no longer maintain his gentle and rational facade, and he lost control, cornering me against the wall. What does he have that I don't? Money, power, or is he just better at pleasing you? Chapter 1. As the workday was ending, a sudden downpour started. My colleague Carolina forgot to bring an umbrella and came over to share mine. I didn't refuse. Looking down, as I opened the umbrella, I heard Carolina speak enviously. Being a secretary is really the best. Proximity gives you the advantage. Sue's secretary has only been here for 3 weeks and already gets to share an umbrella with President Chen. In 3 months, we might all be calling her Mrs. Chen. I raised my eyes. My gaze passed through the rain, fixing on the 2 figures under the opened black umbrella. They were walking side by side. Martin was striding ahead, while Laura was running after him. She was in such a hurry that she lost her balance. With a startled cry, she almost fell to the ground, but Martin quickly reached out, catching her around the waist. The scene played out perfectly, like a classic romantic drama on TV. I looked away and shook the umbrella, sending countless raindrops to the ground, creating ripples. Aren't you leaving? If the rain gets heavier, we might not be able to leave later, I reminded her. Carolina, seeing that I wasn't responding, poked my arm helplessly. That's the successful and self-disciplined President Chen, revered by everyone in the company. Aren't you the least bit tempted? She clutched her chest, putting on a look of deep anguish. She sighed dramatically. Anyway, seeing someone else take the co-pilot seat in President Chen's car makes my heart ache. Carolina's exaggerated acting made me laugh. I pulled out my car keys and pressed the button, making the lights flash on the Audi parked by the roadside. I lifted her chin playfully and said with a smile, "You might not be able to sit in President Chen's co-pilot seat for now, but would you like to take a ride in mine?" Chapter 2. Taking Carolina home took a bit longer than expected. When I pushed open the door, Martin had just placed the last dish on the dining table. He was wearing comfortable loungewear, and the apron he had on seemed to be the couple set that the mall had given us last time we went shopping. Under the warm yellow light overhead, the cold, impersonal aura that Martin usually carried from his years in the business world had completely vanished. All that remained was a gentle softness. Martin walked over, took the bag from my hand, and hung it on the coat rack. Then he bent down, took out a pair of slippers for me, and placed them at my feet. His fingertips naturally brushed against the ankle strap of my high heels, the warmth from his touch spreading to my cold skin. I stiffened and took half a step back, refusing Martin's help. "I'll do it myself." Martin was slightly taken aback but said nothing. "I made your favorite pork rib and pumpkin soup. Go wash your hands and eat while it's hot." Silently, I changed out of my shoes and walked toward the sink. As the water flowed through my fingers, my thoughts drifted away. In the 3 years of living together, Martin and I had crossed many lines. Helping me take off my shoes was just a minor thing. But just now, when Martin leaned in, I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of resistance. I knew the reason, but I didn't want to admit it. It was because of Laura, and also because of myself. In these 3 years, in the day-to-day routine that felt like a frog being boiled slowly, I had forgotten that my relationship with Martin started as nothing more than a drunken fling, and that his kindness towards me was merely out of courtesy. I had uncontrollably fallen for him, confusing physical needs with love. Laura's appearance had been a wake-up call, jolting me back to reality. Fortunately, it wasn't too late to pull away now. Chapter 3. I ate that meal with little interest. After only a few bites, I put down my chopsticks and went upstairs to freshen up. When I came out of the bathroom, Martin was waiting outside the door. His brows were slightly furrowed, and his gaze, fixed on me, was filled with concern. I didn't know how to treat Martin at that moment, so I chose to ignore him. As we passed each other, Martin grabbed my wrist. He held it tightly, as if trying to leave an indelible mark on my skin. "You today?" I sensed what Martin wanted to ask, so I spoke first. "Do you want to do it?" A flash of surprise crossed Martin's eyes. I didn't give him a chance to respond, and instead, I stood on tiptoe and kissed him. But gradually, Martin took control. His palm pressed against the back of my head, deepening what started as a tentative kiss. Martin couldn't even wait until we reached the bedroom just a few steps away. He pushed me back into the bathroom. The humid steam still lingered in the bathroom, and through the thin nightgown, I was pressed against the cold tiles, cold and wet. Martin was the only source of warmth I could cling to. I had no choice but to wrap my arms around his neck, forced to endure everything he brought upon me. I bit my tongue, suppressing the tremor in my throat. It felt like a competition, where the first to make a sound would be revealing their hand and lose everything. I didn't want to lose so badly. Sweat dampened my forehead, and Martin reached out to brush my hair aside. He lowered his head, lovingly kissing away the tears that spilled from my eyes. "Don't hold back. Call my name, okay?" There it was again. Martin always did this, using a soft, coaxing tone to weave an illusion of love, making me fall deeper before the uncontrollable sobs could escape. I bit down hard on Martin's shoulder, even as I tasted blood. I didn't let go. Martin groaned in pain but then let out a helpless chuckle near my ear. "You really are a handful." In the end, I was exhausted. It was Martin who carried me back to the bedroom. In a daze, I felt my left hand being gently caressed. I curled my fingers and asked hoarsely, "What is it?" Martin didn't seem to expect that I was still awake. He cleared his throat, trying to cover it up, and intertwined his fingers with mine. "Nothing. Go to sleep." Chapter 4. Everything that happened that rainy night dried up and faded with the bright, clear sky. I had been on a business trip for over half a month, busy non-stop. I hadn't had the time or the mind to dwell on the past. So, when I entered the passcode and opened the door, only to come face to face with Laura, I couldn't help but feel a moment of shock. Laura was wearing a lace camisole. I recognized it immediately. It was the one I had tucked into Martin's wardrobe. Laura's eyes sparkled with delight, but upon seeing that it was me, her expression shifted to one of subtle hostility. She curved her lips into a smile and spoke in a hostess-like tone. "Miss Lynn, is there something you need?" I rubbed my temples, which were throbbing from exhaustion. I didn't scream at Laura, demanding to know why she was there, nor did I ask where Martin was. I simply returned her a calm smile. "I'm just here to pack a few things, and then I'll be on my way." After living here for 3 years, I made several trips up and down to gather all my belongings. I even took the rose plant from the balcony that I had been taking care of, though it was Martin who had been watering it all these years, carrying bags upon bags. Laura gave me a sidelong glance and reminded me, "Miss Lynn, you should check carefully to make sure you haven't left anything behind." She lifted her chin slightly, a hint of sharpness in her otherwise innocent face. "After all, now that there's a new occupant, the old things should be thrown out. If you leave anything behind, you wouldn't want to go digging through the trash for it." The smile on my lips didn't waver. "Now that you mention it, I just remembered, there is one last thing I haven't taken with me." My gaze swept over Laura, my brow lifting with a hint of mockery. "The nightgown you're wearing is mine. Would you like to take it off and give it back?" "You?" Laura clutched her chest, her face flushing with anger. I had no interest in arguing with her, so I waved dismissively and said in a calm voice, "Never mind. I have a thing about cleanliness. Consider it a gift." Chapter 5. I returned to the apartment I had rented before, carrying my heavy luggage. Even after moving in with Martin, I never gave it up. Perhaps it's because I was too pessimistic, believing that everything with Martin was nothing more than an illusion. Sooner or later, I would have to wake up from the dream. Fortunately, my pessimism allowed me to have a place to stay at this moment. I washed up briefly, overcome by exhaustion from my non-stop work. I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, it was already evening. The endless darkness swallowed me whole. My heart suddenly felt empty, filled with an overwhelming sense of loneliness. It felt as though the world had abandoned me, Fortunately, that feeling didn't last long, as it was interrupted by the sudden ringing of my phone. I answered, and my mother's voice came through the receiver. Her words were nothing new. She asked the usual questions: if I was eating and sleeping well, if work was going smoothly, things she had repeated to me countless times over the years. I listened quietly, responding every now and then. In the end, my mother's gentle voice became tinged with a slight tremor. "Lily, are you coming home for the new year this year?" I wasn't sure why she was asking about New Year's plans so early, but I answered honestly, "I'm not sure yet. Why do you ask?" There was a pause before she replied, "It's nothing. I just miss you. It's been so long since I've seen you." Her words hit me like a hammer to the chest. A wave of sadness welled up inside me. I came from a single-parent family. My concept of home had always been blurry. My childhood memories were filled with images of my father, idle and drunk every day. He had a bad reputation, indulging in drinking, gambling, and other vices. When he won, life for my mother and me would be a bit better, at least we wouldn't get beaten. But when he lost, it was different. He would take out his anger on my mother, grabbing her by the hair and dragging her into a dimly lit room like a butcher dragging his prey to the slaughter. The old house was in disrepair, and the door didn't close properly. At the age of 5, I was forced to witness my mother suffering through a narrow crack in the door. Her anguished screams filled the room, while outside, I banged my hands against the door until they were bloody. I couldn't break the door open. I couldn't stop the torture that was happening inside. This went on for a long time, until one day, my father's clenched fist struck me. That was the day my mother, who had always endured, suddenly fought back. She grabbed a kitchen knife and swung it wildly. "You beast! If you dare touch Lily, none of us will live." Her hair was disheveled, and blood oozed from a wound on her forehead. She looked like a demon that had crawled out of hell. My father was startled and left, cursing under his breath. My mother put down the knife, her strength suddenly gone, and pulled me into her arms. Her tears soaked my hair as she whispered in a choked voice, "Lily, don't be afraid. Mom will take you away." After that, my mother single-handedly supported the two of us. She worked herself to the bone to provide for me. All I could do was study hard, work hard, and make a success of myself, so she could enjoy a comfortable life. But over the years, I had been so focused on making money that I forgot what she needed most was my companionship. I glanced at my savings. The string of zeros was enough to let me live comfortably for the rest of my life. I no longer had a compelling reason to stay in Beijing. Once I realized this, I spent a week wrapping up my work and resigning from my job. The night I left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't even bring my suitcase. Just before boarding the plane, I sent Martin one last text message. It was my way of ending our 3 years together. "I'm going back to my hometown to get married. Let's not contact each other anymore." Chapter 6. With the burden of work lifted, my days back in my hometown were almost excessively peaceful. To keep myself from getting too bored, I built a small flower garden in the yard. Every day, I tended to the flowers and plants, finding a sense of contentment in it. However, my mother grew increasingly concerned by my quiet behavior. They say no one knows a daughter better than her mother. From the first day I returned, my mother noticed something was off with me, but she didn't ask anything. I didn't know how to start, so I just played along, pretending everything was fine. "Your Uncle Song's son heard you were back and mentioned that it's been a long time since he last saw you." I was basking in the sunlight in the yard, half asleep. Hearing this, I opened my eyes halfway and responded vaguely. Seeing that I didn't show any signs of resistance, my mother was slightly relieved and continued, "I thought you two are both young, so you should have things to talk about." I accepted his invitation on your behalf. "It's just a walk, a meal. You can't keep staying at home like this. You'll drive yourself crazy eventually." My mother spoke with a hint of concern, knowing she had a point. I couldn't argue, so I agreed readily. "All right, I'll meet him." Chapter 7. Oscar Song and I were childhood friends. The night my father fled in terror, my mother gathered all our savings and took me on a green train. After several transfers, we arrived in the city where we live now. Oscar lived right across from us. His mother was a gentle person, When my mom was too busy to pick me up from school, she would take me along and invite me to her home. The first time I stepped into Oscar's house, my face was filled with anxiety. I was terrified of Oscar's father, even though every time I ran into him, he would greet me with a warm smile, but I still feared that in the next moment, he would clench his fist and grab me by the hair. None of what I feared ever happened. When Oscar's father saw me, he just patted Oscar on the back and said, "Your sister Lily is here. Why don't you take her to your room to play? Whatever treats or toys you have, you need to share with her, okay?" Oscar, who was the same age as me, took my hand and answered crisply, "Okay." That's the biggest difference between Oscar and me. He grew up surrounded by love, and he was even generous enough to share half of that love with me. Chapter 8. It's been so long, and you really haven't changed at all. Still so quiet. A sudden cold sensation on my neck made me shrink back, frowning as I looked at the culprit. Oscar quickly offered a peace gesture. He handed me a cup, smiling as he sat down across from me. Four Seasons Spring Macchiato. No ice, no sugar, with taro balls. I remembered correctly, right? It's your favorite. I took it, poked the straw into the bottom, and took a sip of the milk tea before replying, "You haven't changed either." Still as childish and talkative as ever, Oscar leaned back in his chair, his dark hair falling messily over his forehead, giving him a nonchalant look. "It's only with you. Though, if I hadn't grown up with you, I'd probably be the cool, aloof type." Oscar sighed. "Unfortunately, you've always been an ice queen. If I were a mountain, it'd be hard to get more than 12 words out of you in 12 years. I smiled, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. "How have you been these past few years?" Oscar continued to make small talk. "Pretty good. I'm practically living a retired life now. What about you?" "After graduating from college, I worked as a wildlife photographer for 2 years, interacting with nature. But I got injured a while ago, and my mom was so scared she cried her eyes out. I couldn't keep worrying her." Oscar shrugged helplessly as he spoke. "So now I've had to give it up and am planning to start a studio." "That sounds like a bit of a shame." I crossed my arms and raised an eyebrow, teasing him. "But getting to experience the passion of starting a business at your age is like being 18 again." Oscar pretended to be angry and, catching me off guard, raised his hand as if to flick my forehead. I instinctively turned my head to avoid it. Oscar's hand hovered in the air, and the atmosphere grew tense for a moment. He then casually pulled back his hand, breaking the tension with a joking tone. "Forget it. This youthful heartthrob who's returned to 18 has nothing to say to an old-timer like you." Chapter 9. Oscar and I walked around, stopping at several places we used to love. As evening approached, Oscar drove me back to my door. Just as I was about to say goodbye, he grabbed my hand. Oscar held my hand tightly and squeezed my palm. "Lily, the reason I asked you out this time was to tell you, I like you." I looked down at our intertwined hands, then back at Oscar's face. "When you filled out your college applications, you didn't choose Beijing. Instead, you went to another city because you saw the confession I wrote on the last page of my notebook. Didn't you? That was your way of subtly rejecting me?" Oscar frowned, a flash of urgency in his eyes. "At that time, I thought you just couldn't distinguish between love and dependency, and that's why you had feelings for me. But later, I realized how wrong I was. The one who couldn't distinguish was me." Oscar looked down at me, waiting for my response. "You're right," I answered softly, gently pulling my hand out of Oscar's grasp. "Back then, I really didn't know the difference between love and dependency. At that time, we were inseparable. You were the only one who took care of me, who treated me well, who shared everything with me. I hadn't experienced much love, so I naturally thought that was love." The words on the tip of my tongue spilled out with my trembling breath. But now I realize that love isn't about taking everything the other person has to offer. Love makes you foolish, even when you have nothing. Even when you know the other person doesn't lack love, you still willingly offer that little piece of your heart. That's what love is like, neither entirely good nor completely bad. I paused, meeting Oscar's gaze with a serious look. "So, you'll always be a brother to me. You were before, and that won't change." The evening breeze swept through, tousling the strands of hair around my ears. After a long silence, Oscar suddenly let out a chuckle. He tapped me lightly on the head with 2 fingers. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make me blink in confusion. This long-winded speech about love actually came out of your mouth? I must have been mistaken about you. You haven't stayed the same, you've changed a lot. Tell me, who did you fall in love with? And why didn't you bring him back for your big brother to check out? The tension eased. I didn't hide anything from Oscar, shaking my head and answering truthfully. There's no chance for us. Oscar knew me well. He knew I wasn't someone who would say something so disheartening easily. Oscar didn't try to persuade me further. He simply brushed the stray hair back behind my ear and said gently, "It's getting windy. You should head inside." Chapter 10. I watched as Oscar drove away. When I turned around, I found myself face to face with Martin across the street. I had no idea how long he had been standing there. The faint glow of his cigarette flickering in the dark. A sense of helplessness washed over me. Despite living together for 3 years and sharing countless intimate moments, there was always an insurmountable distance between Martin and me. Like now, I never even knew Martin smoked. A cold wind swept by, carrying tiny droplets of rain. I shivered, ignoring Martin as I walked past him. "Who is he?" Martin suddenly spoke. "A blind date," I calmly replied as I entered the passcode. "Did you leave me to come back and marry him?" Martin pressed on, his tone colder than the late summer evening breeze. I remained silent. Martin took my silence as confirmation. He suddenly grabbed my shoulder, his grip tightening as he demanded, "What does he have that I don't? Money? Power?" I was backed against the wall, unable to retreat further. "Or is it that he's better at pleasing you?" Martin leaned in closer, the harsh smell of tobacco assaulting my senses, making me even more alert. I met his gaze defiantly and said, "Did I not make myself clear in the text?" I calmly repeated the contents of my message. "Let's not have any contact for the rest of our lives." "Why?" Before I could finish, Martin interrupted, his voice almost out of control. His grip on my shoulder tightened, causing a faint pain. I responded, one word at a time. "Everything gets tiresome eventually. It's been 3 years, and I want something different. Is that so wrong?" Chapter 11. With the final heavy rain, the summer heat gradually faded away. Martin didn't appear again, and my life returned to normal. I was carrying a bag, just a few steps out of the supermarket when a shadow suddenly darted toward me, causing me to stumble. The contents of my bag, bottles and jars, shattered on the ground. I frowned and looked up at the person. One glance was enough to make my body tremble uncontrollably. "Lily, your father has finally found you." A voice I hadn't heard in so long dragged me back to hell. Luis Lin was kneeling on the ground, tears streaming down his face. It was all my fault back then, and that's why our family was forced apart for so many years. But I've changed now. More and more people gathered around, attracted by the commotion. Such a young girl, yet so cold-hearted toward her own father. Even if her father was in the wrong, he's still the one who raised her. What can't be forgiven? As the subject of these whispers, my face turned as pale as a sheet. As a child, I had often dreamed of the day I would meet Luis again, but no matter the direction of the dream, it always ended in a bloody disaster. Luis was a deep-rooted sickness inside me. As long as he was alive, I would never find peace. My eyes fell on a shard of broken glass at my feet, sharp and small. If I cut Luis's throat, he would die quickly. Then everything would be over. I pressed down on my trembling hand, preparing to act. But before I could move, I was pulled into a warm embrace. Is scamming so brazen nowadays? Martin's warm palm gently stroked my back, pulling me out of my daze. My girlfriend's father passed away recently. I watched with my own eyes as he was cremated. You jumping out now and pretending to be him is not a good look for society, is it? With just a few words, Martin shifted the crowd's perspective. So he's a con artist. No wonder the girl had no expression. He must have touched a nerve. Poor girl, losing her father so young. Isn't this human trafficking? Call the police, quickly, before he escapes and hurts someone else. Luis tried to argue, but when he heard the word police, his expression changed drastically. He scrambled to his feet and ran away. With the drama over, the crowd dispersed. "Are you okay?" Martin held my wrist, looking at me with concern. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my gaze traveling from the cap on Martin's head down to his clothes. When I noticed he wasn't wearing his usual suit but instead a studded leather jacket, my eyes widened in surprise. "And what's with the outfit?" Martin avoided my questioning gaze, his dark eyes flickering. "Just a whim, trying out a new style." "Oh." I didn't press the issue. Turning to leave, Martin called after me, asking, "Do you need help dealing with that man from earlier?" I shook my head, indicating that it wasn't necessary. "My problems, I'll handle them myself." Chapter 12. I didn't tell my mom about Luis's appearance. I didn't want her to worry or live in fear, so I just told her that things were a bit unsettled lately and advised her to stay indoors as much as possible. At the same time, I reported the incident to the police, but their response was that without any tangible harm, there was nothing they could do. And besides, he was still my father. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Luis. "Lily, do you really think that hiding from me means I won't find you and your mom? If you push me too far, it won't just be text messages. Your mom is getting old, and she's already taken so many beatings to protect you. You wouldn't want her to live in fear again, would you? I know you have money. Give me $500,000, and I'll pay off my gambling debts. I promise I won't bother you anymore. After all, I'm still your father. You wouldn't really want to see me get my hand chopped off, would you?" Of course, I didn't believe a word Luis said. If he could extort me once, there would definitely be a second time. So, I needed to think of a way to end this for good. After pondering for a long time, I typed out an address. "Meet me here tomorrow night. I'll bring the cash." Chapter 13. As dusk settled, the time to meet Luis was fast approaching. I changed into something inconspicuous and grabbed the suitcase before heading out. When I arrived at the alley, Luis was already there, pacing nervously. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. I tossed the suitcase to the ground. It hit the pavement heavily, and bundles of cash spilled out. Luis immediately dropped to the ground to gather them. The streetlights in this alley were old and dim, casting a foggy glow. Even so, it was enough to illuminate the greed in Luis's eyes. "Dad knew you'd come through. With this money, I can finally turn things around." Luis counted the bills, a layer of giddy joy clouding his face. I watched him in silence and let out a small laugh. As expected, my laugh caught Luis's attention. He looked at me warily. "What are you laughing at?" "I'm laughing at how foolish you are," I replied. "Did you really think I'd let you control me? 50,000, it's more than enough to get you in deep trouble for extortion." I spoke calmly, but Luis's face changed instantly. His voice trembled as he shouted at me. "I'm your father. You owe me this money." Unmoved, I continued to provoke him. "Is that so? Save that line for when the police get here." Luis gritted his teeth, a violent rage bubbling up. "You little brat. How dare you call the cops? I should have beaten you to death back then." A crazed look flashed in his eyes. I knew Luis had lost his mind. He was on the run, his nerves constantly on edge. Any slight disturbance could break him. And now, after giving him hope, I had shattered it in an instant. I watched as Luis grabbed the fruit knife I had placed in the suitcase and began to approach me. "If you won't let me live, then I'll take you down with me," Luis shouted viciously as he lunged at me with the knife. In that split second, the pain I was expecting never came. Instead, I was pushed from behind and fell heavily to the ground. The sound of the knife piercing flesh, followed by a pained gasp, filled the air. I looked up in disbelief. Martin was kneeling on the ground, blood gushing from the wound, staining his once pristine shirt. The stark contrast between red and white burned my eyes. Seeing the blood, Luis snapped back to his senses and instinctively fled the alley. I ignored everything else and rushed to check on Martin's injury. His face was as pale as paper, his bloodless lips pressed tightly together. "Lily," I held Martin's cold hand, fighting back tears as I responded. "I'm here." With one hand, I comforted Martin, while with the other, I grabbed my phone from the ground and called for an ambulance. Martin rested his head on my shoulder, his voice barely audible. "That day it rained. You kissed me. You once said that friends with benefits should follow 3 rules: no kissing on the lips, and no recognition outside the bedroom. I thought that when you kissed me, it meant we were officially a couple, but then you turned around and left me to marry someone else, saying you were tired of me. It's not fair. I've liked you for longer than 3 years. Martin's voice was uncharacteristically soft and tinged with hurt. My heart felt like a shaken soda bottle, emotions bubbling up and choking me. I breathed heavily, struggling to push the words out through my tears. I love you. Warm tears spilled down my cheeks and onto Martin's neck. He froze. Then a faint, uncertain smile touched his lips. You're not just saying that because I'm about to die, are you? No, you're not going to die. I shook my head desperately. Martin reached up and wiped away my tears. Can you kiss me? This was our first real kiss. Our lips barely touched, mixed with the salty taste of tears. In this moment, it felt both ridiculous and pitiful. The sound of sirens grew louder, and Martin was loaded into the ambulance. Oscar followed behind the police officers. He helped me to my feet as I wobbled. Sorry, I was a step too late again, but I didn't hear him clearly. My focus entirely on Martin. I wanted to go with him to the hospital, but the police stopped me halfway to take my statement. By the time I arrived, Martin had already undergone surgery and was resting in his hospital room. How are you feeling now? Seeing my worried expression, Martin smiled. Don't worry. I'm fine now. I opened my mouth to speak, but seeing Martin like this, I was at a loss for words. I could only blame myself for not being more careful. Don't frown. This pain is nothing. It's insignificant compared to the pain of seeing you get hurt. My ears burned, and the atmosphere grew awkward. The next moment, the door was flung open. How did you end up in the hospital again? I turned to see a red-haired, punk-styled man enter the room. Our eyes met, and he instantly smiled. You must be the wife, right? I'm Martin's friend, Diego. I smiled back, my attention caught by one word he used. Did you just say again? Diego casually pulled up a chair and sat down. Martin didn't tell you? He pulled an apple from the fruit basket he'd brought, wiped it clean, and took a bite. He took over 20 lashes with a family whip just to marry you. I have to say, old Master Chin is really ruthless. He usually calls Martin his precious grandson, but when it came to this, he didn't hold back. His skin was practically flayed, and they didn't even give him medicine. They just threw him into the ancestral hall and made him kneel, without even a sip of water. Diego munched on the apple and threw a pained look at Martin, completely oblivious to the cold glare Martin was giving him. Speaking of which, I do owe you an apology, Mrs. Chen. Diego changed topics so quickly that I couldn't help but ask. For what? When Martin was on his 3rd day of kneeling, his wounds got infected, and he developed a high fever. When they carried him out, he was delirious, but he insisted I go water his flowers. Diego scratched his neck awkwardly, but I figured it wouldn't be right for a man like me to intrude on your love nest, so I gave the address to his secretary. I didn't expect what happened next, so I apologize, but Martin's love for you is as clear as day. That's enough out of you. Get out and deal with things outside. Martin, unable to take it anymore, threw a pillow at Diego's head. The movement pulled at his wound, causing him to groan in pain. Who told you to move? Martin leaned back against the headboard, putting on a weak facade. It hurts. I was about to call for a doctor when Martin grabbed my wrist. Kiss me, and the pain will go away. I sat back down and helplessly held Martin's hand. I'm not a painkiller. How do you know it won't work if you don't try? I lowered my head and lightly kissed Martin's fingertips. His thumb gently brushed against my lower lip, sending a tingling sensation through me. I cleared my throat, trying to cover up my embarrassment. Diego mentioned the flowers. Were they my roses? Martin let me play with his fingers, a soft smile on his lips. You already knew. Those are the only flowers in the house. I licked my dry lips and continued. The day I left, I took the flowers with me, but for some reason, I couldn't take care of them as well as you did. It seems the task of caring for the flowers will have to be yours. Martin lowered his gaze, looking at me with such tenderness that it nearly melted me. I just wonder if you have a place for me. I met Martin's gaze, What role do you plan to take when you move in? Your future husband. I froze as something cold was slipped onto my ring finger. Gathering my courage, I looked down and saw the ring glinting in the light. When did you? The night I thought you were asleep. I secretly measured your finger. Looks like I got it right. Martin took a deep breath. His voice gentle but firm. Is this a role you're willing to accept? I am. Martin leaned in. Our second kiss landed on the corner of my lips. Chapter 14. Luis was apprehended faster than I had anticipated. Charges of extortion, intentional injury, and the added years of domestic violence I reported were all brought against him, with both witnesses and evidence, coupled with Martin's refusal to settle. Luis was facing a lifetime in prison. The shadow that I once thought would haunt me forever had finally lifted. Today's a good day. How about we celebrate with some hot pot? I suggested as I linked my arm with Martin's. Martin's eyes curved into a narrow smile. Always willing to indulge me. Sounds good. And let's pick up that succulent grape cake from the dessert shop on the way. What else? Can't think of anything else right now. We can decide along the way. I held onto Martin's warm hand, and the chill of late autumn was completely dispelled. The deep-seated burdens that had weighed me down for so long were finally lifted, replaced with a love that felt both heavy and light.